Hey guys, thank you for checking out this video. This is part 2 in a series for a sign I built for a friend of mine's church. In the first part, we built the sign itself, which has all the lettering and all that fun stuff. In this part, we're building the frame and doing all the standing and painting work. Part 3, which we've already shot but I gotta edit, is gonna be us installing it at the church, and ultimately I think it looks pretty good. It was definitely a learning experience for me. Did some things I've never done before, but ultimately I really like it and they were pleased, so that's all you can ask for, right? I learned some things, they're happy, I'm happy, it's all good. Also, I got some stickers for the channel, so if you want one of those, I'm sending them out for free. Just shoot me an email or a direct message or something like that with your address, and I'd be happy to get those out for you. If I've been in touch with you about sticker swaps, I'm getting those in the mail this week, so you should see those soon. Thank you for checking this out, and please stay tuned for the build. Alright, so here we're just taking the vertical supports and I'm ripping them to the same thickness as what that top beam is going to end up after we glue it. Now, unfortunately, the post didn't start off square, and so when I finished the cut, it wasn't perfectly square. You can even see in the picture there. Definitely would be helpful to have a jointer in this instance. If I were to do this again, I'd probably use my thickness planer instead of my table saw and just run it through a bunch of times. That way it would have been a little more square, I hope. Alright, so here I'm getting ready to cut the tenons. I'm doing this on my sliding compound miter saw, which has a cut depth stop, which allows this to happen. When you do this though, you see you have to space it away from the fence to allow for the curve of the blade. With the stock not being perfectly square and a little bit of play in the saw and everything, it made the tenons so that they weren't totally perfect. I was able to use it, but I don't know that I would do this again unless my stock was perfectly square and I had adjusted some of the play out of my stand. Now here you can see this is the actual depth stop itself on my particular saw. Most of the other sliding saws that have this feature use some kind of variant on this where you have a screw that comes down and adjusts the cut depth. And it kind of makes it function like a radial arm saw. Not quite as nice as those for this particular task, but it worked. Here we're just sanding off a little of the rough surface of the posts. Now I'm getting ready to glue up the top beam. I wanted a 4x6, but my local Home Depot didn't have one. I found some 2x6 redwood, and one of the pieces is really gorgeous, and my friend Matt, who you see there, happened to stop by, so put him to work as usual. And so here I'm just wiping it down with a moist rag because we're going to be using Gorilla Glue for this, and the reason we're using Gorilla Glue is that the wood was still a little bit wet on the inside, so I wanted a glue that would work with the moisture instead of something that would fail because of it. Unfortunately, I didn't have an option to get perfectly dried, like kiln dried wood or anything like that. So instead I used Gorilla Glue, which actually needs moisture to complete its chemical process. So it turned out pretty well. We'll see how it holds up. I think it's going to do well, but it's the first time I've ever used this, so that was a learning experience as well. It's kind of syrupy and gloopy and messy, and then it expands quite a lot as well, which you'll see a couple of different shots of in this project. You see how the Gorilla Glue bottle is squozen in the middle. One thing I read in the reviews before I bought it was that it goes bad, but the people who were able to keep it for many years mentioned that if you follow the directions on the bottle and squeeze all the air out, it won't go bad, so that's what I did. And it kind of makes sense because if there's air in the bottle, then moisture gets trapped in there and it causes the glue to have its chemical reaction complete. Here I'm just cutting off the messy edges of the top beam on the table saw, and because of how it went last time when I was cutting the post down, I just tried to do it with solid cuts all the way through from the table saw and go slow. It worked out alright. Here I'm just drawing the curved end on with the carbon paper, kind of like I did the letters. Now here I'm using the Festool Carvex jigsaw, which is supposed to cut really square. That's one of its big selling features. On this first cut, it didn't cut square at all. And most jigsaws actually don't cut all that square in really thick stock like this. And so you'll see me checking with the square here in a minute, and it was pretty far out of square. But just to be sure, I double checked the Festool setup video and all of that, and when I cut the second curved part on the other side, it actually came out almost dead on square. It was off by maybe a millimeter over that 3 inches, which is quite impressive for a jigsaw. So if all else fails, read the manual, right? Now here I had to keep brushing off the dust because it was clumping up because the wood was so wet on the inside. Getting in the way of the cut line I couldn't see, so I had to stop here a couple of different times and clean it out. Because even with the dust collection, it still wasn't pulling all the dust. Here I was just checking for square, and this was actually pretty impressive once I had the saw adjusted right. Here I'm just kind of cleaning up some roughness in the cut with my sander there. It has an interface pad which helps it wrap over. It's like a foam pad that helps it wrap around curves a little better. So here I'm doing the mortises with the router. Now this was a big learning experience for me. You know, the bullet points of what I learned is I need to keep the router a lot more steady. And I would clamp on some physical stops for this because I just used lines, and it worked out okay, but I had a few times where the router slipped past the cut lines, not all the way deep, but and so you'll see in later shots how the mortises are a little jacked, but it worked out pretty good. I definitely learned some things. So here's the first one I did, and you can see this is before I've cleaned it up with a chisel, and it did go past. This is the second one, which came out a lot better, except when I first did that first cut, that part in the lower left there happened where the router slipped when I was first plunging it in. So here I'm just cleaning them up with a chisel, and afterwards they look better, and I was able to use them. Luckily this is facing down and it's not fine furniture, so I was able to make it work. It's the first time I've ever done mortise and tenon, and definitely need a lot of practice with that. So here I'm just adjusting one of the tenons. This piece, when I put it into the mortise, was sitting a little proud of the front of the beam a little more than I wanted, so I trimmed off some of the mortise trimmed off some of the tenon on the back, which let it sit further back in the mortise, and then I put shims in, which you see right there. Now here I'm just putting Gorilla Glue in here. Again, the wood on the inside of this beam has still got some moisture in it, even though it was in my shop for a good 4 or 6 weeks. And so I use the Gorilla Glue again, and it needs moisture to activate it. So I actually, you're supposed to wipe down the boards with a moist rag, so I did that, and then combined with the moisture inside the beam. And I actually had a better shot of this, but the file got corrupted, so here's what you get. So I put glue in the mortise and on the tenon, and then shove those guys together, and I have some long pipe clamps here. These are just 1/2-inch pipe clamps, but kind of like Jay Bates says, the 1/2-inch, I had no problems with them. They worked fine for me. They're a lot lighter than the 3/4-inch ones. So here's showing the glue expanding out of the joint. This is what the Gorilla Glue does, and this is actually kind of helpful because the tenons weren't super tight, all over the place in every little spot, so that kind of helped fill in a little bit of the gaps. It's not really meant for that, and it's not really strong with that, but it helped a little bit. We're just sanding some of the glue spots off. Here I'm applying a decking product called Australian Timber Oil made by Cabot. I did a lot of research about the finish for this because we didn't want to do a film finish like a polyurethane or anything like that. And in the research I did, actually, it's not recommended for redwood to do any sort of film finish like that. And a lot of urethanes break down outdoors. There's a spar urethane, which is meant for being outdoors, but generally speaking, it's not recommended for redwood. So I use this Australian Timber Oil, which is nice, and we'll see how it holds up. It was pretty highly rated for redwood. And I got a brown color, which will help the wood be more of a consistent color, and it's a lot more the look we were going for. Because after it was sanded, the redwood was actually pretty light. and I'm just applying it to the sign. I'm putting it into the letters because I was kind of hoping it would seal them a little bit before I painted them. It didn't, so I had to go over the letters a few different times because the paint kept soaking in, but it worked out. And here I'm just getting started on painting. This was kind of a tedious process to paint it cleanly. A lot of times when you make rounded signs like this, you can just paint really sloppy and sand over the top, but that didn't really work out in this particular instance because of the finish that we chose and how everything just came together. So I had to be really kind of meticulous about that. And here I'm just adding the eyelets that it's going to hang by. Just before this, off camera, we tried to drill one of the holes and it had a little chip out on front, so we had to super glue that back on. That's why you see the 2P10 activator there. Now this is a neat trick if you've never seen it. I saw it in somebody's video, I don't even know who, it's been a while. But anytime you need to insert an eyelet like this, shove a screwdriver or something long through it to make a handle, and it makes it a lot easier. Doing the same thing, drilling the holes and inserting the eyelets on the top beam. And that showed up on this day too because he was going to help me install it. This was the morning before we installed it. That video is actually already in the can. I'm going to edit it up next, and that should be up just in a couple of days. Alright, so now it's pretty much complete. And that's going to go ahead and hang the sign on here so we can have a look. Looking good. Hey, thank you so much for watching this build. I really appreciate you making it this far if you did. It was a fun build. I learned a lot and they really enjoyed it. If you enjoyed the videos, please share and like them, leave comments. That's really helpful to get the video out to other people, which is the whole point of sharing on the internet, right? Also, I got some stickers in for the channel. Yay, stickers! That's the thing to do now, I guess, right? So I got some in. If you want one, I am sending them out for free, so just shoot me your address in an email or a direct message on Instagram and I'd be happy to get you one out. If you want to trade, that's cool too. I'd love to put yours up in my shop. Other than that, stay tuned for part 3 where we're going to install the sign, and I'm also going to go over my little learning lab section going over what I learned on the project, which was a lot on this project, let me tell you. So stick around, and thanks again for making it this far. I really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.